Good morning and welcome to Champions Breakfast, sponsored by Children First. Before we get started this morning, I would like to thank Gregory Jacobs for providing the music. Gregory, will you stand up so people can see? Gregory is a senior at St. Louis Park. It's also his 18th birthday today, I believe. Happy birthday, Gregory. We do put children first in this community. I am Bob Tift, and I proudly serve as president of Benilde St. Margaret's, and even more importantly, I am the co-chair this year of Children First, and I'm delighted to be helping host this event this morning. I've been a resident of St. Louis Park this time for 25 years now. My wife and I moved here about 25 years ago, but I also feel like I grew up in St. Louis Park. I went to Benilde High School, back when it was called Benilde High School, and I worked at Methodist Hospital in dietary. My mom worked at Methodist, my sister worked at Methodist, so we spent a lot of time in St. Louis Park. Yeah, Methodist Hospital, all right, Park Nicollet. But we've loved the opportunity to raise our four sons in this great community of St. Louis Park. I was fortunate enough to be one of the people that was invited with the other community leaders and people that work with youth over 20 years ago by Carl Holstrom to come and talk about a local initiative where we would reach out and help build assets in young people. And I was immediately captured by the whole concept of building assets and by the work that Search Institute had done. We knew that this is a great community, and we knew it was a strong and safe community. But here was, at least in all my years of education, we had seen a program that was very proactive, a proactive approach to developing assets and supporting young people. I remember a book that that Peter put out talking about the sparks that children find in their lives. And we know as parents and as educators and as youth ministers and all of that serve the young people in this community how important it is for students to find that spark in their life. Last night at the Caring Youth Award, our mayor talked about finding the passion, helping our kids find their passion in life. And as a dad and as an educator, there's no greater joy than to see a young person find their passion in life. And that's what this is all about, and the work that Children First is all about. It's all of us as business community, as public and private schools, as churches and synagogues, and everybody in this community, the city staff, all the elected officials deciding that we're going to do everything we can to embrace our children in this community and create a very strong, supportive, safe community for them so they can find that passion. And very proud to be part of that. I'd like to introduce you to the people who lead the Children First initiative and serve with me on the Children First Executive Committee. I'd ask if they could just stand up as I introduce them. First of all, Dr. Deborah Bowers, St. Louis Park Public Schools. Deborah? Brad Bakken, Citizens Independent Bank. Bridget Gothberg, City of St. Louis Park. Tom Harmoning from the City of St. Louis Park. Chief John Luce from the St. Louis Park Police Department. Monica Murphy from Japs Olson Company. Helen Siegel from the Minneapolis Jewish Day School. Nancy Tellett Royce, a youth development consultant. And last but very much not least, Karen Atkinson from Children First. Karen. This year we have two young people that chair the Children First Asset Champions Network with me this year, and I'd like to introduce them for the first time. The children are, I shouldn't call them children, these young men and women are from Benilde St. Margaret's. Surprise, surprise. First, I'd like to introduce Carlin Gordon, who is a junior at BSM, and Danny Tift, who is also a junior at BSM. Would you please come up to the podium? Carlin and Danny are going to help me introduce you to a very special guest we have with us this morning, Dr. Merton Stroman. He was the founder of the Search Institute, and for 58 years has made a difference in the lives of young people. Mert turned 94 last month, and we'd like to thank Dr. Stroman for providing leadership to youth in the development field. And we'd like to grandfather him in as an asset champion. So Danny and Carlin are presenting Dr. Stroman a Children First pin and an asset champion plaque. Let's congratulate Dr. Stroman. We have lots of people and organizations who made this event possible. Isn't it exciting to see the turnout that we have today? Karen, what did you say, 280 people signed up this morning? It's great to have you all here. We'd like to give a special thank you to Monica Murphy with Japs Olson, who helped with planning the event and provided all the printed materials that we have and treating us to breakfast this morning. Thank you, Monica. We'd also like to thank our other generous sponsors, Doubletree Park Place Hotel, Swank Audiovisual, and Park TV. Let's thank them for all of their support, too. We know that an important part of the success is the support we receive from our elected officials, and we have some of them this morning that are joining us. Would our elected officials please stand so we can say thank you and recognize you? Please stand up. Thank you for coming. We also want to offer many thanks to our table hosts who invited you to join us today. They are wearing blue ribbons. Mine's over there. We should be wearing blue ribbons. And they played a key role in this event, and they're all listed in your program. Today's program will introduce you to 12 young people who were co-chairs of Children First during the past 13 years. They will share their reflections in a video with you that you will see later. All of the past and current adult youth co-chairs wearing red ribbons today. Please help me in thanking them for providing their leadership, which has extended a 21-year-old initiative. Let's give them all a hand. We also have special people in the audience today wearing purple ribbons. Those are the people that last year, when we had our first breakfast for the Champions Breakfast for Children First, made the inaugural 3-year pledge, and we want to thank them for their tremendous support for Children First and the work that we do. So let's give them a hand as well. At this time, I was going to introduce Khadijah Sharif, who is going to share a poem with us today. She is ill, and Bridget Gothberg is going to come up and read this poem from one of our seniors at St. Louis Park High School. Please welcome Bridget Gothberg.
Thank you. As you can tell, I hardly look like somebody named Khadijah Sharif. However, I would like you to open the book that says Breakfast of Champions on it and turn to the page that it says Children First Champion Breakfast. And the second person down is Khadijah Sharif, class of 2014, so she's a junior in high school. She cannot be with us today. I have 2/3 of her poem because she added to her poem before we got the other 1/3, and then she could not come. But I want you to look at her picture because she's really the only one that can tell this story. It's about her family and it's about Somalia. And this is her poem. A bit of moon to your lightning eyes, sunset lips to your hailing smile, a bit of hope in your desert soul, a dash of past clashing tornado, a rainy check to your breathless cheek. Poetry is simply beneath your fingertips and between your dreams. That was a lullaby my mom used to sing to me in her native tongue, with rhythmic love bound to her hands, which were mothered by a mother who fell sweet below the bellowing stomach of our poetic nation. This made the blood in my veins run deep, with the drum bound to beat a melody, one that spoke of history, one that dreamed of victory, one that made me the heroine in an unspoken, untold, delicately folded story. That is what brought me to be as I am today. Her hands were stained with the soil of our land, her words crafted in my mind, and ingrained in my dreams to revolve around love as I lay asleep in her hands, steady as a rock. And now here I am, today, speaking of my mother, who had mothered my brother, who has mothered my sister. And who could forget my father, who taught to question and see things as they might be? But honestly, I grew up with ink and paper. With those two tools, I drew myself a canvas through words, because poetry never hurt. Thank you.
Thank you, Bridget, for sharing that. And for those of us that know Khadijah, it's important that we thank her for those wonderful words that we shared. A few words before we start breakfast. I'd like to draw your attention to the placemats at your table. They represent the theme, our theme today, and were handcrafted by some of our youngest citizens here in St. Louis Park. Thanks to the children of the SLP Early Learning Program and Kids Place Child Care Program at the Central Community Center for creating these for us. Now we ask everyone to please enjoy your breakfast.
I just want to let you know a little bit more about Children First before we get too far into the program. Because I think if you're not familiar with Children First, what you need to realize is it's not really one certain program. But what Children First does is encourage all adults in the community to establish intentional connections with our young people and help them find their positive attributes and passions. And what we call this, kind of the wonky term for it, is developmental assets. And each of the table placards has an asset on it, and the assets are in the brochures about Children First at your table. Bob talked about Children First is based in a partnership. You met our executive committee. They are representative of our partners, really community-wide. Over 20 years ago, our community said this needs to be a great community for our young people. And we have organizations who put asset building front and center in their mission statements. So I've been here, I can't believe it, since 1994. And when I started with Children First in 94, there were a couple dozen volunteers, and they were involved in a vision team. But that now has morphed into what we call the Asset Champions Network. And we have over 200 volunteers trained as asset champions from every place in the community, ages 17 to probably 90. So just all over the community. And there's probably an asset champion sitting at your table, so look around. There's probably one of those trained people sitting with you. Our asset champions hold our young people close and intentionally focus on their positive development. Now, what you need to know about Children First is it's not just for at-risk kids. In fact, we don't use that term. I have to use that term, so you need to dispel that myth. Really, we're talking about all kids, and all kids have potential. And we're looking at them in a positive lens and building on their strengths. Because we believe every young person in St. Louis Park deserves our best. They deserve our focus. We raise resources every year to support our daily work because everything that we offer is free, like this breakfast this morning. So thanks to Japs Olson and the DoubleTree. So your support is really important to us, and we really appreciate you being here today. I just want to tell you, this year we had a community conversation, and we had a group of community members together, over 100 people, pondering the question, if we were the best community in the world, what would every young person need? And the theme that kept coming out of that was youth empowerment. And so as a result of that, we established what we called huddles, and we have small groups of people that are pondering that and really delving into what that means. There's still meetings, so I don't have a report, and that may go on for a while. But I can tell you, I don't know what the perfect definition of youth empowerment is, but I know what it is when I see it. And one thing I know is it's free. You don't have to spend a lot of money to empower youth. And you don't need to be a trained professional, and we have a lot of wonderful trained professionals in the room today, but any one of us can empower a young person. And I think it's just as simple as acknowledging young people when you see them. St. Louis Park was the first city to use the asset philosophy community-wide, and there's now 600 efforts across the globe. And one such place is Albuquerque, New Mexico. And a friend of mine, Flora, who lives there, I think shared a story with me that gets at the heart of this. Flora had recently heard Dr. Peter Benson speak. This was a while back. And Peter was the president of Search Institute, and he and his colleagues developed the 40 assets. So Flora was shopping one day, and as she was walking through the grocery store, this information was kind of tumbling in her head, thinking about the assets. And when she reached the cash register, she noticed the girl bagging her groceries. And she decided she was going to kind of approach her in this new asset light that she had. It was kind of hard to miss Maria, the girl bagging the groceries, because her hair was hanging in her face and she wasn't really looking up. But Flora went out on a limb, and when she was done, she said, "Maria, thank you so much for bagging my groceries." And she goes, "I know you've helped me before, and what I appreciate is when I get home, my produce isn't all squished and the eggs are whole. I really appreciate the job you do." And it was the kind of grocery store where the bagger goes out to the car, so Maria went out with Flora, and again, Flora said, "Thanks for your help." And Maria just barely lifted her head, and she responded, "Thanks for noticing. Nobody ever does." So that could have been the end of the story, and you would have felt good to have that happen. But many years later, Flora was leaving a school that she was working at, and a young woman ran after her. And she stopped her, and she said, "Excuse me, I just wanted to let you know I'm Maria. I was the person that used to bag your groceries for you. I work at this school now." And Flora was kind of surprised to see her, but Maria went on and said, "I remember the day that you complimented me for bagging your groceries. I remember that day because I had planned to kill myself. But you were kind to me, and I realized that there's people who care about me." And here she was now working in education. Excuse me. I've told that story before, I've heard that story before, but it's just amazing what a simple action can do. And of course, not every action is going to turn out like that. And even if it did, the chances that Flora would have heard that story, that's amazing in itself. So I want you to look at the quote on your table from Mr. Rogers, which says, "Anyone who does anything to help a child in life is a superhero to me." That superhero is you. You are that anyone. So I would like you to help share this message beyond the room. And our table captains hopefully each have bags of note cards. And if you have them, you can pass those around now. Those are a gift for all of you. And if you don't have them, does everybody have them?